Earlier today, I had a victory against a 2100 rated opponent, and in this video I'm going to break down exactly how I did it. The key moments, the key instructive lessons that you can use to improve your own play as well, whatever your current level might be. So let's jump in. White opened with d4 and I played knight to f6. Knight to f3, g6, I'm going for a King's Indian defense setup. And now white played knight to c3. Now the threat that comes with this move, knight to c3, is to play a quick e4. I didn't want my opponent to take full control over the center, so I played d5 to counter this idea. So now if e4 were played, well, white would just lose a pawn. So bishop to f4 was played. White has gone for a Jabava London system. And now I played c6. One idea behind c6 is to play b5 and then eventually b4. It can be very annoying for white to face this threat of pushing the knight away from c3. This is partly about knowing the opening, and not just the opening moves, but the opening ideas, the thematic middle game ideas. So white continued with queen to d2, and now another thematic middle game idea, which I know of from white's point of view, is white often wants to play bishop to h6. So if I were to play bishop to g7 here, well, we might get bishop to h6, and then the bishop gets traded off. And I didn't really like this because it kind of wastes a move, right? I've moved the bishop to g7 only to quickly have it traded off the board. So white will look to continue now with h4 and h5, pushing pawns on the king side, probably castling queen side, and it's just an idea which I didn't really want to allow. So I can delay playing bishop to g7, and I can delay castling my king. So instead I played knight bd7, and now white jumped in with knight to e5, and I decided to capture that knight straight away, which is a bit inaccurate, but white's reply was inaccurate as well. And I just point this out to mention that even though we're both 2100, it's not like we've memorized 20 moves of opening theory, right? It might seem as though 2100 is a long way away, depending on your current level, but we're making opening mistakes as well. So already on move 7, we're both playing out of the book, and we're having to rely on our positional understanding to play the rest of the game. And now I made another mistake. I played knight to d7. This makes a lot of sense. Like, I'm trying to target this pawn. Like, now I'm happy to try and play bishop to g7 and gang up on this pawn with the knight, also attacking it. The better move here was knight to h5, attacking the dark squared bishop, but I was trying to win the pawn. But this ran into a strong move which I didn't really see coming, which was e4, looking to open the center straight away. This e4 move is possible now because the knight, which was on f6, has been pushed away from its post. So e4 came and I captured, and white surprised me again now by castling queenside. So white is going for activity. He sacrificed a pawn, but he has got quite a bit of compensation here, I'd say. I mean, white is down a pawn, but you can see, according to the engine evaluation, that white is better. Now, why is that? Well, it's because of white's development advantage. White's got pressure now along the d-file. It means that I can't move this knight away without losing the queen with checkmate. So this is actually very uncomfortable, and I think my opponent found a really challenging way to put pressure on me straight away. So I had to fight against this. I played bishop to g7, just looking to castle, right? Like, if I could castle, then I think I'd be all right. But now white played another strong move with e6, another pawn sacrifice. Now this pawn sacrifice really needs to be accepted. Like, I can't move the knight away, right? Move the knight away, I get checkmated. So I have to take this one, and then he develops again with tempo with bishop to c4. So really strong play by my opponent, and I think it would be very easy to crumble here. I'm 2 pawns up, but my position is definitely unpleasant. If I were to castle here, well, then I'd lose the pawn, and it seems as though I might lose the knight as well, because I've got 3 attackers on that knight, the rook, the queen, and also the bishop, and only 2 defenders, and it's check, so I have to move the king out of the way, right? I do have the counterattack on this bishop, which saves me from losing a piece, but this is not looking good for black here. So what I did instead was I found the best move, as it turned out. I played queen to a5. So I think the lesson here is that when you're under pressure, like when you're pinned like this, you want to escape the pin as quickly as possible. It would be wrong to play a move which I think many players would play, trying to hold on to the material here with a move like king to f7. This would just be too much, right? Well, white can win one of the pawns back anyway via knight takes e4. And now the threat is knight to g5 check. And yeah, the black king is just too exposed here. If you try and stop knight to g5 check, well then one strong move that white could play is knight to c5. That's not even the strongest move, but it's showing the problem of staying in this pin for too long. If you take the knight, then you lose the exchange, just to show that. So yeah, that wouldn't be a good way to play. Queen to a5 just gets out of the pin and gives up this pawn, which white took. But I had worked out that if white took this pawn, then I can develop with tempo again. Okay, so now I can play knight to c5. That attacks the bishop twice. So it's like I've given back a pawn in order to fix my development problems. And I think this is a key lesson that if you find yourself in a similar situation, right, you've got an extra couple of pawns, but you've got development issues, then you should give back the material, one of the pawns at least, in order to fix the development problems. So now the bishop is attacked. If he did take here, well then I can take back and I don't have this pressure along the light squared diagonal anymore. Probably I can castle here and I'm still a pawn up. So that's what I had expected, but my opponent decided instead to retreat with bishop to c4. And now I played bishop to f5, just looking to develop and maybe bring the rook over here. I am a pawn up, remember. So if I can trade off the queen and the rooks, then I should have an advantageous position in an endgame. Now, if you're enjoying the video so far, go ahead and click the subscribe button. I do all kinds of content on chess, including game reviews like this one, also game reviews of master level games, and also tips on how to improve. So by subscribing, you won't miss out on any of the great future videos that I've got in the pipeline. So let's see what happened next. White played a3 here. What he's trying to go for, I think, is b4, looking to push this strong knight away from its post. I'm not sure that b4 actually works because I'd be able to take there with check, but just remembering the situation that I'm in here, that I'm a pawn up but with worse king safety, I played a move which I think looks to simplify the position and plays in the way that the position demands. So I played bishop takes c3 here. The idea is that if white takes back with the pawn, now I've got this ability to capture on a3 with check, right? That's why I thought a3 was a problem, because this pawn is weaker on a3 than it was on a2. And if white instead captures with the queen, as happened in the game, well then I can trade queens. And now we've reached an endgame where I think white still has some extra activity, but I'm not in danger of getting checkmated here. But I do still need to be careful because these two bishops are very strong. They're controlling a lot of squares. The white rook is controlling the d file. If I played rook to d8, well, I guess he might trade and then give another check. I didn't really like the look of this. I guess I've got king to c8 followed by rook to d8, but it's still, yeah, there's a lot of squares being covered around my king. But you know, according to the computer, this is fine, but I didn't like it in the game. Instead, after quite a lot of thought in this position, I played what I think is another quite strong move here, understanding what my problem is. And my problem is really this light squared bishop. It's cutting across my position and, yeah, causing me a lot of problems. I can't castle because that's illegal. That would put the king into check. And if I play, if I play like e6 to try and block it, well then that gives a new square to one of white's other pieces, right? Every pawn move creates a weakness, even in an endgame. So the pawn moving from e7 to e6 means that the dark squared bishop can come in here with some threats. Another way of playing, which I think many players would go for, would be to try and win this pawn on c3. But I'd also calculated this, that I run into trouble after bishop to e5, attacking the rook. Now the rook is short of squares. It can't go to g8 because then it gets lost. And if I go to f8, well then it also will get lost after bishop to g7. So you always need to look at every forcing move from your opponent. Do a blunder check, right? Like I think this may have even been my first thought. When I was back in this position here, my first thought I think was to try and counterattack and win another pawn. But then I stopped and I thought, well, if I do that, what forcing moves does white have? And one of them was bishop to e5. And if I carried on that calculation just a couple more moves, as I did, let's show that line again, I could see that the rook was going to get lost. So not good news for me. The engine shows that this is not so bad for black, but I don't agree with that. I think practically this is much better for white. Yeah, the rooks will overpower the minor piece, I think, 9 times out of 10 with humans playing the game. So what was the good move that I mentioned before? The move that I said that was in keeping with the demands of the position? Well, understanding that this bishop is my problem, I looked to trade it off. I played bishop to e6. So now if the bishops are traded, I will be able to castle next move. This also comes with a threat against the dark squared bishop of white's. So I think this looks to fix my problems. What happened after bishop to e6 is that white instead retreated, trying to keep material on the board given that he's a pawn down. But then I'm able to castle, and I'm also able to castle with a threat against the dark squared bishop. Now, my opponent, being a strong player, looked to counter the threat with another threat, playing bishop to e3. Now that attacks the knight. But now I can bring the knight into a4 with this threat against the pawn. And he looks to defend it in the most natural way. But again, using the concept of forcing moves. Always look at the forcing moves in every position. So one forcing move that you have to consider here is attacking the bishop with c5. So now the bishop is actually overloaded. Well, it has to move also. It has to move away, otherwise it just gets lost. It's overloaded defending both this pawn and this pawn. And once the bishop moved, as it did in the game, I'm able to take on f2. So now I'm 2 pawns up. So we'll just take a quick pause here to understand the transformation, right? From this position here where I'm under a lot of pressure on the d file, unable really to castle, lots of threats against my weak pawns, I've been able to transform it by playing the demands of the position to a situation where I'm 2 pawns up, my king is reasonably safe, and I've got the threats. I've got the threats against the weak white pawns. Amazing how things can turn around. Now, if you're enjoying the way that I explain things, then I offer myself as a chess mentor to those who are looking to improve their results in the game. So if you're looking to boost your rating, maybe you've got a friend of yours that you can't seem to defeat and you want to fix that, then you can get my help through the Road to 2000 Chess Improvement Program. You can check that out by clicking the link in the description below. We can set up a time to chat and see if working together will be a good fit. So back to the game, and let's remember what the situation is here. The light squared bishop is attacked, and so is the pawn on g2. So how can white look to solve these problems? Well, I think there's a couple of ways. The first is to go defensive with bishop to f1. But defensive moves are always to be avoided if possible. It means that the white rook on h1 is going to struggle to get into the game because now the bishop blocks its way. And it's for this reason that my 2100 rated opponent played in the second way, which I think is much stronger, by counterattacking with bishop to b5. Now I don't have time to take the pawn on g2 because the knight would fall. And it's actually this exact same mindset which I used to make the next move as well. So the knight is under attack, and how do I respond to that? Well, one way is to retreat, knight to b6. But the counter-attacking way, the way which I think is natural for those who are 2000 plus to think, which is maybe not so natural for those who are low rated, is to answer this threat with another threat. Rook to f5 is the move that I played. So now this bishop actually can't stay on a square which keeps the defense of this pawn. All of the squares on this diagonal are covered by me. It obviously can't stay where it is either. And if it moves out of the way, well then the pawn gets lost. And now I'm 3 pawns up and I'm going to be winning even more material due to the fork. And what it really means is that white has to take the knight and I take the bishop. And this transformation has simplified the game significantly in my favour now. If we just go back a couple of moves, we can see that there's still some imbalance in this position because of the fact that I've got a knight while white has got a dark squared bishop. So white has got the bishop pair. But after this series of trades, after the knight is gone and the dark squared bishop is gone, now the piece material is equal. Both of us have got 2 rooks and a light squared bishop each, and the only material difference is my extra 2 pawns. So this has simplified the game in my favour. Let's see how the game continued. So rook h to e1 was played. White is looking to fight against this passed pawn. And now I played a6 with the threat of playing b5, looking to shut that light squared bishop out of the game. So white played bishop to d7. Now there's a potential blunder to make in this position. If you play something like rook to d8, then you're going to lose due to this check, which picks up the rook. So now black can resign. You can see how careful you need to be, right? Things can change very quickly. So don't play a move like that. Continue to be careful, even if you're up material, especially if you're up material. Tell yourself the game is not yet won, and you need to never relax until the opponent has either been checkmated or resigned. The other move which I think many players would play here is trading, right? Because we want to get even further towards a simplified endgame. But this, I think, helps white, because now this rook is more active than it was. It's on the 7th rank with an immediate threat against the b7 pawn. So you want to avoid trades that improve your opponent's piece activity. And it's for this reason that I responded to bishop to d7 by playing bishop to f5. So now if white wants to initiate the trade, then that's going to improve my position, because now the pawn on f5 defends my passed e-pawn. So it's often the case that whoever initiates the trade will help their opponent. Let's see how the game continued, because neither of us initiated the trades. Instead, white played h3 with the idea of playing g4. Now I played h5, which actually doesn't prevent g4. So I made some mistakes in this game. We saw that in the opening as well. Didn't play perfectly, but of course only human. So there will be some mistakes in the game. It's just key to avoid the really big mistakes. So yeah, g4 came anyway, and the thing is that I can't take this pawn because it's defended via x-ray by the white light squared bishop. So now I actually did have to initiate the trade. So my opponent got a small positional win there by getting his rook to an active square. Okay, so now again, let's compare a couple of ways that I could play from here. One is by defending this threat against the b7 pawn with rook to b8, but that ties my rook to passive defense, and I don't want to do that. The other way of playing is with b5. Now b5, I believe, is much stronger because now this rook is free to participate in the game. I want to play rook to f8 and get it onto an active square, onto an open file even. So now white played rook to e3, looking to block this pawn's advance, and now I played rook to f8. Now I expected my opponent's next move, rook to a7, looking to target this weak pawn. That move, rook to a7, wasn't possible before, because when my rook was on a8, it was defending this pawn. But I was willing to give up that pawn because I'd calculated that if white were to trade here and win the pawn, well, this pawn is too fast. I can just play f2, and there's no good way to stop this pawn from advancing. You can even give up this pawn with check, doesn't even matter. This pawn is going to become a queen next move. Worth noting the important role that this pawn plays in preventing rook to f6. So every detail in the position matters, especially when it comes to time to promoting a pawn. So after rook to f3, my opponent also found a good defense. He didn't play this. Instead, he played king to d2. So now I gave a check, which made the king move back, and now rook to e6. So I did eventually defend this pawn passively, but only because I got the rook active first, okay? So I was willing to give up this pawn in that other line, right, where I get the pawn far enough advanced to look to promote it. I'd give up the pawn on a6 in that case, but like in the game, there's actually no reason to let that pawn go. I've got a static advantage, which means that I've got time. I don't have to rush. I can keep hold of my extra material with a move like rook to e6, and it doesn't give white really time to improve his position all that much. So now c4 was played, and now I played another mistake. I played rook to f4, looking to target this pawn. But now white is actually able to win one of the pawns back by capturing here and playing rook to b7. I can't defend this pawn now. I'd have to advance it, and then eventually it does get lost. I win this pawn back, it's true, but yeah, this is still winning for me. It's just a little bit inaccurate, that's all. So rook to f4 wasn't the best way to play, but I did still have an advantage here. White instead played rook to c7, and now I did look to trade. So I can't hold on to every pawn in the position, and I shouldn't even try to. There's going to be some pawns traded from the board, but I'm still maintaining my 2-pawn advantage here. Now looking to activate the king. We're into an endgame now, clearly. So I'm just trying to improve slowly. That was a threat against the pawn over on a3, which my opponent avoided. Getting the pawn a little bit further forward. I'm just trying to hold on to everything and advance slowly. Offering trades which favour me, right? Like if he were to take this one, now the pawn again is defended. That would improve my pawn structure. Which is why my opponent instead avoided that trade. Back to this position. Advancing this pawn now. Like this pawn here is well blockaded by the rook. I can't really move it forward for the time being, so maybe I can get this other pawn to become the hero that'll turn into a queen. Activating the king again, that prevents rook to g5. And offering another trade which should favour me if white accepts it, and white did accept it, and white looked to win the pawn. Now this here is a key moment. And this goes to endgame understanding of the patterns. So what should black do here? White was able to just win back one of the pawns, but I was prepared to allow this because of knowledge of the endgame patterns achieved through prior study. So black to move here. And based on understanding, not calculation, but just understanding, I was able to find the move rook takes e3 check, because this is a winning pawn endgame for black. I don't need to calculate ahead 10 moves in order to know this. All I really need to know is that the side with one extra pawn is often winning when all of the pieces have been traded, right? Like back here, all of the pieces do get traded after the rooks are exchanged. But if I had avoided this trade, let's say with rook to c6, well then white has still got some drawing chances. You saw how the engine bar reacted there. It says that it's still winning for black, but it's much more complicated than if the rooks are exchanged. Because this is very simple now. All I need to do is just stop this pawn. That's the one counterplay that white's got. But actually at this point my opponent resigned. But let's just show how the game could continue. Let's say that he advances the pawn. Well, I'm in time to stop it. And if he wins this pawn, then that's okay. I give up this pawn as a distraction sacrifice because the king is now too far away and I'm able to come over and win the one remaining white pawn on this side of the board, and he'll win that pawn too, but it doesn't matter. Just through pretty simple calculation, we can see that that pawn is unstoppable. Now, as you saw, the end of that game was decided by an understanding of the endgame patterns. If you click here, you can check out the video that I've prepared with every endgame pattern which I think you need to know in order to reach a rating of 2000 rapid on chess.com. Go ahead and check it out.